We're in downtown Olympia at the Red Lion Inn, a massive police response to an Antifa-led takeover of the Red Lion Hotel. Seattle major media is here.
For the people out here who have told us that they have been repeatedly calling 911, asking police to address this situation. That woman we just told you about who said that her mother is an employee hiding out inside here says that she has actually called for help from the National Guard, from senators to help address all this. And now live here in Olympia, we are seeing all of this unfold. We're going to get as close as we can to the scene. This is definitely, from what we've seen, different from how officials are handling.
Tremendously different response than what we saw at the Travelodge in Fife. Olympia Police Bike Patrol is kitted out in riot gear. Washington State Patrol, Thurston County Sheriffs. The entire city block is surrounded. The backside of the Red Lion Hotel is surrounded. Something that we've never seen in response to any kind of occupation, protest, violence, or vandalism in Olympia. This is a new, overwhelming, integrated, multi-agency response. We see a little bit of this is in downtown Olympia, Washington. We have the Washington State Patrol riot team responding, Thurston County Sheriff, and Olympia Police. They have put mattresses up against the glass doors. State Patrol response force. The number of vehicle units alone is easily close to 100. Olympia Police Special Operations van, and looks like the Thurston County SWAT response vehicle. They are arresting occupiers as they come out. Once again, if you're just joining us, this is downtown Olympia, Washington, state capitol. At about 11 a.m. this morning, officially part of the state capitol campus, a sort of town square park in downtown Olympia called Sylvester Park was the site of a pro-housing, pro-homeless services rally scheduled to kick off at 11 a.m. that nearly immediately segued into an occupation of the Red Lion Hotel across the street from that. The group calling themselves Olympia Housing Now had apparently purchased a number of rooms for up to 33 people. And
housing, you fucking coward! You fucking coward! All of you fucking bitches!
How are you out here against civilians needing housing in a pandemic? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with every single one of you? You're disgusting!
Fucking coward!
You people are shit! People need housing!
Are you getting this?
You fucking cunts!
This is the alternative to giving people a place to stay? You fucks! In the middle of a fucking pandemic, there is
the housing rally that took place this morning at 11 apparently evolved or devolved into occupying the Red Lion. There were reports of sort of a intimidation, not necessarily violence, taking over the lobby and the front desk. And the police responded a little bit later in the day and were sort of given gave the all clear that it wasn't an event by force, that the protest had sort of followed the same MO as the Fife, Washington protest at the Travel Lodge, where they had purchased a night worth of lodging and then continued to stay, taking taking the ban on evictions as a way to stay within the hotel. I believe that went on for about a week at the Travel Lodge in Fife, Washington, coordinated by a group calling themselves Takeover Housing Now. This newly formed name, Olympia Housing Now, basically followed that same template, which is not unusual that, you know, what works in one municipality sort of gets through the grapevine and social media and gets repeated elsewhere. This apparently is not working in Olympia today, which is a tremendous break from the normal, generally very muted response from local law enforcement. Not to say that they're not doing their jobs or eager to provide fair and safe law enforcement, but just simply that the political climate in Olympia has been very permissive of protests and vandalism. That started to change about a month and a half ago when right-wing and left-wing protesters clashed repeatedly on weekends at the state capitol or just off of the state capitol campus grounds, and led to some gunfire, somebody actually being shot. And since then, the prospect of protests has gotten a lot more serious, has been taken a lot more serious by law enforcement. I'm not sure if these are, we may actually have see an officer here getting more tape and wristbands, not wristbands, but zip ties for ostensibly for arrests. The response force that are all in camouflage makes it a little bit curious whether those are local response force or if they may have commandeered some of the response from the National Guard that's stationed here around the state capitol for the response. That strike team in all camo is now entering the building. Looks to be a team of about 20, and they may be here to provide security. They may be actually exacting arrests or executing arrests. We're not quite sure. There's now a crowd of about 50 onlookers live streaming or taking videos, and a law enforcement response of about, I think the estimate earlier of 100 vehicles was overkill, probably more like 50 law enforcement vehicle response, but easily 100 law enforcement forces numbers between Olympia, Thurston County, and Washington State Patrol. Please share the stream to whatever groups or pages you're affiliated with who might be interested in what's going on in terms of protests, law enforcement response. The Pacific Northwest, which is, you know, over the last year been a hotbed of protests and political divisiveness. There's clearly a lot of interested folks out and some very upset onlookers as well.
That's how we waste our taxpayers' money, on 5 fucking people. Yeah, that's right. That's what I said.
Cairo 7 is just down the street from us. They were doing a live remote with the on-air talent. I'm not sure who it was, when it became apparent that the police were closing in on the location.
Manipulation, mind control, and all that stuff. That's what it's about. They want to get rid of all the fucking poor, and we're going to have it over here. All cover their big fucking order.
If you're just joining us, we are in downtown Olympia, Washington. We're in front of the Red Lion Hotel, formerly known as the Governor House Hotel, prominent hotel in downtown Olympia near the state capitol campus, and historically a place where state lawmakers often stay when they're here for the legislative session. That's probably somewhat different this year, simply because the legislative session is almost exclusively virtual over Zoom or other similar measures. So we don't have quite the legislative staff, lawmakers, and lobbyists in town for session this year like we normally do. But you can probably bet that there are at least some in the hotel tonight. Be interesting to see their response to the concerns about housing during the coronavirus lockdown, as well as the law enforcement response, as well as the overall occupation.
They just showed up. They're
You
right
shit,
there.
get cold and die, motherfuckers!
Hey, yeah.
Fuck 12!
I got everything in the car.
So far, we're not seeing any more activity coming out of the hotel. Our view is a little bit blocked by the Olympia Police van, which apparently is sort of backed up for putting in arrestees.
I will, 100%. If you can't get out of there in time, I have somebody who can take me back and whatnot, and I'll bring your keys with me or something. And I gotta be.
Sounds like somebody who's at the fence. Let's have a conversation about how
I would rather die for that fucking idea than to see this. Houses, people, and no place to go. What the fuck is wrong with you? You disgusting fuck. All of you are wrong fucking man. You
Here we see Cairo News crew covering the event.
Miguel's right behind you, supporting the shades.
Olympia hates houseless people! Y'all are pieces of shit!
Thank you for running around with that tattoo. I'm so sorry.
Why are you sorry?
Because, like, of course, the time I have it literally attached to you is when everything breaks in live, right? So.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Oh no, it's okay.
Did he just go by you?
Yeah, he's right there.
Hey, you're still attached though. Cool. All right, let's see what we got here. Thank you. Appreciate it. No problem.
Or like my grandma always said, they could just pay me.
That's a good policy right there. So can you do me a very big favor?
Depends on the favor now. I'm just kidding.
Can you do me a big favor and grab my car? I'm over in the car.
How the fuck do you live with yourself?
If you're just joining us, we are in downtown Olympia, Washington, at the Red Lion Hotel,
They're inside right now.
where protesters
Fucking monsters!
occupied the hotel in a almost cookie cutter emulation of the recent Fife, Washington occupation of a travel lodge, where a housing advocacy protest group rented a bunch of rooms for a night and then put homeless people into those rooms apparently, and then stayed without being willing to come out, and law enforcement was sort of caught between the governor's anti-eviction mandate and just also the logistical nightmare of trying to handle that. And that group in about 3 weeks ago was called Takeover Housing Now. This group sort of emulated just about everything about that, calling themselves Olympia Housing Now. Occupied, but basically purchased rooms for, I think, 33 homeless folks, and then this morning sort of occupied the lobby and said they weren't leaving and they weren't vacating the rooms. Our understanding is the police came by earlier and said, basically checked to see if it was a safe environment, if there was no coercion or threat to the employees or the other guests, and then left. There was a little bit of confusion about that as to whether there was a response being created, which clearly now there was, or whether they were satisfied that it was a peaceful occupation and the hotel was going to sort of go along with it. And now clearly they weren't. So we have a little bit of a different type of standoff with law enforcement apparently entering the building, going room to room, and working with hotel staff, it looks like, to sort of know what rooms are occupied by the protest groups or protest group guests. What's not clear is whether the arrests are being executed on the protesters or the room inhabitants, or both. Again, a large Washington State Patrol presence, which is not something we've seen in response to protests, even large ones. Typically, we haven't seen State Patrol in riot gear until or unless they're immediately adjacent to or on the state capitol grounds themselves. Now, this is an interesting sort of turn of events, because the housing advocacy protest that started this off this morning was, I believe, held here at the Sylvester Park, which, even though it's a park in the middle of the city, is actually property owned by and part of the state capitol campus, and it is patrolled by and maintained by the state of Washington. So that is under their jurisdiction as far as law enforcement and, I believe, maintenance and upkeep. But the protest presence in the park, I think, ended right at about noon or earlier. Excuse me, running out of water. Ended about noon or earlier, and then moved over to the hotel. We can see over a dozen guests at their windows. I'm not sure if those are hotel guests that just don't know what's going on, or if those are guests that were paid for by the homeless community, paid for by the protest group calling themselves Olympia Housing Now. Might be obviously a combination. And so far, a lot of yelling, but relatively peaceful in terms of no clashes between police and people protesting the arrests. Doesn't look like any. Of course, we can't see inside at the floor by floor, room by room level what's going on as far as the team that's gone in to handle that. I'm not sure what jurisdiction they're actually from. We can hear not only people protesting the current police action, but a few minutes ago we could hear someone from inside the well, what we call the paddy wagon, but there's a big fancy name for it. The rolling jail on wheels. People have been arrested. People were screaming from in there, some of the protest chants. And now we're seeing some of the folks in rooms coming out onto the balcony or opening their sliding glass doors. Do you guys have any kind of PIO available?
Not at this time.
Okay, thanks. Try to get a clarification on a couple of issues. Once, obviously, they're knee-deep and nervous and not sure if things are going to stay orderly, but the overwhelming response on the part of law enforcement tends to keep things a little bit more chill, as does the rain. If you know groups or pages or people that would like to see what's going on in downtown Olympia and in the Pacific Northwest, kind of the hotbed of some of this type of protest action, and Antifa, we don't have confirmation, but we have certainly the folks that we first received word were dressed all in black, many of them black bloc, which is sort of the signature outfit of Antifa. The ninja outfits, if you will. A local attorney who's often at protests and arrest events, you can hear raising his voice. He's kind of known to the protest community, of course, and known to law enforcement, and has a penchant for shouting out his bar number with the Washington State Bar Association. Doesn't seem to have much of an impact on the law enforcement officers. But please share the feed, share the stream, either to invite concerned citizens, concerned protesters, concerned advocates, allies, whatever you consider yourself, concerned groups and Facebook pages. I'll editorialize a little bit, but for the most part, just like to show what actually is occurring and let you judge for yourself. We've seen no crowd control devices, restraints, less than lethal stuff deployed other than actual hand restraints for arrestees with zip tie cuffs. The crowd here has been fairly animated and vocal. Just beyond the law enforcement vehicles that are blocking off Capitol Boulevard, the main street through downtown Olympia that goes up to the state capitol campus. We're seeing some public works vehicles. It looks like they're just maybe laying cones further south on Capitol Boulevard. Gentleman complaining about trying to sleep. Not sure whether he's a hotel guest who's not affiliated with any of the protests and occupation, or whether he is. Let's see if I can. In which direction? Because I hear people in both directions of, hey, let them be, it's cold out and we're in the middle of coronavirus, or people taking over in a hotel is
Yeah, so is it that the homeless took over the hotel and they're holding the employees hostage? We heard somebody up there said that.
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version as I know it, is that there was a housing rally here this morning in the park. Then they went over and occupied the hotel and said, we bought, rooms for 30 people and now we're not leaving and you can't kick us out because of the eviction moratorium from the governor. People need to be safe during this coronavirus and lockdown, and you need to do something, and these are our demands and we're not leaving until you meet them.
I mean, I understand it all, but I mean, I literally work front line in front of it, and I don't know, man. It's just like, I see it every day. This isn't no way to handle it, man.
Yeah, I don't know about a whole bringing everybody here. I mean,
this isn't a way to handle it, meaning having the cops come and remove the occupiers, or taking over a hotel where there's
both. Yeah, no reason. There's other civil ways to do it than holding hostages. Yeah. That doesn't help anyone. If anything, it's just going to piss the police off.
And then also bringing this many people's homeless off as well.
And so imagine how many people in there probably have COVID already. And I'm just saying.
No easy answer, huh?
Not at all.
Not at all. It's definitely.
It's unfair for both sides, but it just depends on which side of the coin you're on.
Sounds like you guys are saying peaceful regardless, and not.
Yeah, I don't know if you can. I don't like the whole standoff kind of stuff.
If you can.
Yeah.
So does that mean that would there ever be a situation where the ends justifies the means, and if you got to crack a few skulls to reach your goal, it's okay? What would be that line? What would be that situation?
I mean, this is not okay.
And then that's going to start a whole freaking retaliation from them.
Gotcha.
What is that going to do?
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, have a good night.
So I thought those folks might have a sort of a hard and fast opinion. They were doing a lot of talking back there, but they really were kind of some of the many curiosity seekers who weren't quite sure, had heard things about hostages and had heard things about sort of occupation by force. And that was one of the initial reports, and actually something we don't quite have officially confirmed or denied. There was a report that the earliest occupation of the lobby and the front desk involved somebody brandishing a knife toward a guest or an employee, not sure. And now, as they continue to make their way through the hotel, the small but vocal crowd is staying energized and animated and shouting at the police. But the other than that, things seem to be fairly relaxed.
There's just rules.
Were you guys at the Travelodge occupation?
Yeah.
In your estimation, has this been somewhat analogous to that from what you know about this?
You guys were there too, right?
I wasn't, no.
Oh my gosh, what a different response. This tells me that there is such a different sort of law enforcement response. They didn't go out for days. You guys are responding within hours, and look at the response. Look at these cars. They're not Olympia Police.
Well, you have to understand, this is completely unprecedented. I mean, this is so out of character for the local politics.
Okay.
To use the state patrol in tandem. They'll usually only get involved if the protest and the conflict between right wing and left wing is on the state capitol campus or right next to it. So we've had plenty of those skirmishes. You probably remember there was some gunfire and somebody was shot. But to utilize such an and we were kind of curious whether the camo group was whether that was some of the folks from the National Guard or if they were just.
If they utilize the National Guard for this.
Well, the strike team of about 20 that went in, they were all in camo, which is that could be local. You know, I'm not familiar with any SWAT or any task force that uses a camo outfit. And of course, we still have hundreds and hundreds of
I'm just fascinated
National Guard.
to know later on how. Thank you. How this all went down. Like, who was it? Do you think it was? And I wonder if it's because you know how people were saying that people were stuck inside.
Yeah.
Maybe that escalated their response.
Well, the alert we got was that there was a housing.
How did you know they were coming?
Just buzz. Somebody had actually seen the bike police all kitted up in their riot gear, which when the police came already once this afternoon at like 2 p.m. and it was nothing, they kind of came and went. Then to have the police later, just half hour ago or hour ago, all done up in riot gear, it was sort of obvious that something was brewing. But at the 11 a.m. or before housing rally, that's when they apparently crossed over and said, hey, we rented, whatever it was, 17 or...
This asshole over here. Sorry. I love you. Sorry.
They don't like me much. They used to invite me to their marches.
Thank you very much. We just got a really big kudos.
Oh, really?
From Lisa. So that was you.
I think that was all you. I don't remember.
No, you were tethered to me.
Oh, Caitlin. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, Caitlin. Yeah, we were safe.
So the
I'm actually not even recording right now.
counter-protesters are noticeably quieter and staying pretty consistent in number.
Bard's a fucking dick.
You're a fucking skeevy.
What merited that?
Sure as hell look like Nazis. They just don't like me. Anybody who's got to worry about the uncut truth isn't a good guy.
Thank you for everything.
So the traffic department is here.
Yeah, that's excuse me, that was about to pick off. I don't know why they get involved.
If you're just joining us, we are in downtown Olympia, Washington, at the Red Lion Hotel,
And I was like, oh yeah.
where there was an occupation of the lobby, front desk, and rooms by 33 people who apparently had. Oh no, you're fine. Had rooms purchased last night and then declared this morning that they would not be leaving until the list of demands for the homeless were met. And this was sort of under the umbrella of a group calling themselves Olympia Housing Now, which is named in the same nomenclature as Tacoma Housing Now, which was the group that staged about 3 weeks ago the occupation of
I'm a professional photographer, 100%
the Travelodge Hotel in, I believe it was Fife, Washington. Tacoma Housing Now did the same thing. They bought a night of rooms for 30 or so homeless people, and then after that night just told them, do not vacate. There's a moratorium on evictions and they can't kick you out. And the local law enforcement were sort of caught between a rock and a hard place, and sort of waited it out, negotiated. The city manager, I think, I don't know if it was the mayor or city manager, did some negotiating, I believe. And eventually I think that they evicted them or removed them after about a week. This response from an integrated law enforcement response from Olympia Police Department, Washington State Patrol, Thurston County Sheriff's Office, and we're still trying to confirm whether there was about 20 National Guard. At least there were folks without obvious patches from visible from other agencies who were wearing all camo outfits, and they were the first ones to enter the hotel. So not sure if that was part of a SWAT or if that was part of sort of a unit borrowed from the National Guard. It wouldn't be my assumption, just because this is not their bailiwick as far as sort of going door to door urban hotel checking, but it's pretty clear that they were basically going for a massive show of force, kind of the overwhelming force response to sort of keep things stable and mellow.
You didn't get my text message.
I don't get anything when I'm live streaming, unfortunately.
Okay. I'm the same way. I'm using something called Switcher Studio. A lot of churches use it. It doesn't like it. Basically, I've got live capability to do all the professional adjustments, animations, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. There's your text. The answer is yes.
So it's all capabilities.
Very good.
I've seen your feed before.
I can put anybody's stuff on there. So I don't care if I'm shooting for you or for you. I'll throw Jolt on there.
We don't see, see if we can see. We don't really see if there's any folks coming out as far as occupants or folks that were in rooms. That may be a slow-going process. I believe there are somewhere around 100 rooms in the hotel.
Get out of here.
There were some counter-protesters who were starting to encroach out onto the street, so in kind of a show of force, and to
Put your fucking mask on! You fucking piece of shit!
You're a fucking police asshole!
You protect property and you're not wearing a mask fucking proves it! You piece of shit!
please share the stream if there's anyone, any group, any page that you think would be interested in seeing what's happening in downtown Olympia. Another protest.
Y'all are evicting people in a pandemic! I like how it took 6 of them to tie a fucking knot!
It goes over your nose, asshole!
don't know if y'all know this, but every single one of you has a gun. Why are you so afraid of people standing on the fucking sidewalk?
Just bring it down a little bit. Thanks.
Watch people who are deceptive with your use of authority. If you are coming in here arresting people without cause, what is the charge for any of the people who you've arrested? You haven't said. You have not provided an attorney to any of the people who have been arrested. Why? What jurisdiction are you asserting? Are you guys stating or are you guys Olympia Police today?
Slide down again. Slide down. Slide down.
Also,
Real good fucking use of tax dollars. How many of you would have used this to put them up into a hotel for the night, but you guys wanted to have a show? How many of you were in D.C.? You guys wanted to make a big show of it. Show everybody how good you are. How you know the law. You are the law. Right? You control the streets. But you guys don't do shit when anybody gets hurt. It's only the windows that get broken that you guys give a shit about. I've seen it. I haven't seen a fucking victim yet. All that I've seen are fucking fake victims in all of your police reports. Not a fucking single real victim. So what the fuck? You think that this is a victim? What's their crime? Wanting to have a safe place to stay. You guys are here in violation of 19.5.
Fall back to the center line. Move.
Skip lines. Skip lines. Skip lines. Skip lines.
yeah, you're doing great. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Clearly a tense situation and difficult for folks who are trying to maintain law and order, folks that think they are fighting for what's right and people's survival and rights. And sometimes it deteriorates down to the tiniest power struggle over this crime scene tape. The police are not engaging over every little infraction or folks disobeying. If you're just joining us again, this is in downtown Olympia, Washington, at the Red Lion Hotel, where a housing protest group calling themselves Olympia Housing Now started with a housing protest for housing the homeless during the COVID lockdown in the Sylvester Park just behind us, which is technically part of the state capitol campus and is patrolled and maintained by the state of Washington, patrolled by the Washington State Patrol. Apparently, during or after that event, they went across the street to the Red Lion Inn and occupied the lobby, the front desk. There were reports that initially there was a knife brandished by one of the folks, whether that was toward a guest or an employee, we're not sure. They then said that 33 homeless folks that they had purchased rooms for were not leaving under the anti-eviction moratorium from the governor. And there were reports that employees didn't feel safe coming or going, or guests. So I believe the police responded at about 1 o'clock and determined not to intervene, which sort of gave the impression that it was probably pretty casual. The local newspaper reported it as being casual when they interfaced with the protesters that were occupying the lobby, at least. And then later, there were reports that there was going to be a response from law enforcement, and whether that was because of a request. One person said they were under the impression that the Red Line had been calling for a response all day and said it was not peaceful or safe. I'm not sure if that's the case. Again, we're just sort of reporting some of the differing viewpoints and conflicting information that we've had passed to us. But now we're into about, well, I'm not sure, but about an hour ago, a massive police response, really from just about every direction, around the back of the hotel, police cruisers, SWAT vehicles, armored personnel carrier, basically, which I believe is from Thurston County SWAT team, a couple of Olympia Police Department vans and paddy wagons, and about 100 law enforcement personnel comprised of Washington State Patrol, Olympia Police, and Thurston County Sheriffs officers, and possibly some of the Washington National Guard. That wouldn't be expected, but there was a contingent of about 20 personnel in camouflage without easily identifiable badges or patches, and they sort of led the incursion into the hotel by law enforcement. And since then, when they first entered the lobby, they arrested maybe half a dozen of the first folks they encountered in the lobby, and have continued what we assume is sort of going floor by floor, door by door. Not sure whether they're actually evicting the folks who were staying over unpaid, the hotel room occupants, or if they're just arresting the protesters themselves. If you have any pages, groups, or friends that might be interested in the response here, which interesting, listening to the, we had off camera, we'd seen her doing a live remote, Cairo news reporter, just casually asked her what she thought this was like compared to having reported several times from the similar Tacoma Housing Now occupation of the Travelodge in Fife about 3 weeks ago. And she said it was shocking night and day that there was no type of response, and that that you guys, meaning Olympia or Olympia's law enforcement units, departments, come down hard. And of course, it's up for debate depending on where you fall sort of on the political spectrum, what you've seen as far as police response. But in most of our observation and reporting, as far as, at least in regards to protests, the Olympia Police Department has had a very hands-off approach. Things got a little bit more serious and involved the State Patrol once the conflict filled the protests of sort of left-wing and right-wing started getting onto the Capitol campus. Then the State Patrol got involved. Some of the larger, more violent protests had also engendered a multi-jurisdiction response.
Well, I mean, if it's pretty big, sometimes I go up to Seattle and Boston. If I'm getting paid to be a photographer, I go all over the state. I go to shoot the NBHA finals last year in Moses Lake. And I'll definitely go into Vancouver if it's worth going to. I can't tell you much what I can say.
We haven't seen anybody else added to the arrest vehicle, but then we've sort of been off axis from where we could actually see folks. Initially, it was a lot easier because they were bringing people out onto the sidewalk, out into the street in a couple of cases, or folks sort of walked out expecting to walk away and then were immediately apprehended. So now we can't really see for sure how many arrestees there are, and well, they're in both Olympia, both of the vehicles where they're putting people are City of Olympia Police Department vans, a passenger van and a box van.
Maybe if we say, excuse me, officer, could you turn off those bright flashing lights? They hurt my eyes. You are so nice and kind. I can't imagine why they would listen.
You can even get some hard ones to transgender.
Tell us about your dog.
So we have competing shouted statements here.
Well, tell the cops that. Not
One is legal advice being shouted by the dime store attorney, and one is some folks in a room in the second floor from the top asking if they have.
Tell him.
You shouldn't film the protesters, you know that, right?
Well, we're just filming from the side.
Yeah. Try not to hit anybody though.
Okay. And some folks in the room are concerned about their having a dog in their room and wanting to try to keep the dog safe.
That's your dog's here for. Service dogs help take care of people who can't take care of themselves.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that makes me sad.
What?
Just all this shit just makes me sad.
Yeah, me too.
I just we've gotten so uncomfortable in our society that I can't even say things like this. Oh, you're struggling. I'm just coming out of my house. You know what I mean? So you can't do that. You can't. It's just so fucked up right now. You can't even lean in.
The
That's somebody up top. They're lucky to muster 20, 30 people in Olympia, unless they call in reinforcements from Vancouver or Portland or Seattle.
So before I got off track, the Cairo news reporter that was, the Seattle news reporter that we were talking to just casually off camera, was surprised at the intensity of the response here in Olympia. And it was truly shocking to hear someone say that about Olympia, just because for the last 8-9 months, the overwhelming response that we've heard has been asking to allow for peaceful protests, but to do something to intervene against violence and vandalism. Now, we're not sure whether this protest involved any violence or vandalism. The initial reports indicated as such, that it was sort of an occupation by force, and that employees may either be in fear for their safety or actually were sheltering in place, was the phrase that we were told. If that were truly the case, I don't know that we would have seen such a delay on the part of the law enforcement response of about 6-7 hours. Well, no, 5 hours, I guess it was, from when they first came here and left, and when they came with this massive show of force. Typically, if they really thought there was life and limb at risk or violence occurring, we'd have a SWAT team here within minutes.
Climate crisis people, whatever, the same people. Always showing up. I don't know if there's still any remaining sleeping. Police officer with the black helmet and black coat straight ahead. Inside the under the exit sign. Yeah.
You know, they just yelled down and they don't care.
There's a in the window, it's hard to see from this distance, and there's also protest signs, cardboard signs obstructing the view. But there are officers with one individual in custody with their hands cuffed behind them.
Emily.
So far, so good. We are not really having arrests of counter-protesters that are gathering on the sidewalk. And the police are just holding a perimeter around the hotel as they arrest folks, or at least evict folks. We've seen maybe half a dozen arrests, and it did look like a couple of officers were walking a woman who was clearly infirmed and had trouble walking on her own, who they may have been walking more to some other type of intervention of a motel voucher or a shelter or something. Not sure if she was homeless, but she was certainly walking very gingerly and barely under her own power. There's still about 20 officers inside, well, at least 20, probably more like 30 officers inside the hotel, and not quite clear what they're doing.
All cops are bastards! All cops are bastards!
Joint Task Force W.
All cops are bastards!
Tactical.
All cops are bastards!
Cleaning out unauthorized people inside. And there were a few arrests.
Again, if you're new to the stream, please like, share, subscribe, invite friends to the group, share it to a group, share it to a page, share it to your friends. We just like to get as wide of a net to let folks know what's going on in their region, their city, or just in general with law enforcement and protesters. Video doesn't really lie. And so far, we've seen very little sort of action, or what some of the protest community calls getting spicy. what some of the protest community sometimes calls police violence. There just hasn't been any real interaction between the bystanders and the police. There have been about half a dozen arrests from folks inside the Red Lion Hotel in downtown Olympia. They had occupied starting at about 11 or 12 this morning. And they actually apparently had been there last night, had purchased rooms for people. 33 was the number we were given. Not I don't believe that's 33 individual rooms, but 33 people total. And how they group people in pairs or in units, I'm not quite sure, but apparently a poet in the crowd. But we have after having purchased rooms last night, they announced they were not going to be vacating those rooms and they were going to be occupying them, as well as the folks from a rally across the street at Sylvester Park in downtown Olympia, which is actually part of the state capitol campus. So it's under the jurisdiction of the Washington State Patrol and Washington Department of Enterprise Services, I think it is, that manages the state Capitol campus. So apparently after their protest, they occupied the lobby and kind of took over the front desk, and there was a report of a knife being brandished. Not clear whether that materialized in anything as far as arrests, but the police at one point responded and then left, apparently without any arrests or intervention. That was somewhere around 12 or 1 today, and then has gone to the response you see now, 7:30. This kicked off about an hour and a half ago, so about 6 p.m. The massive show of force on the part of the police, with the Olympia Police Department, the Washington State Patrol, the Thurston County Sheriff's Office, all together, and about 20 officers or personnel dressed in camouflage, which we're not sure which jurisdiction they were from, or if they were possibly from the Washington National Guard, which still has, I believe, hundreds of units, soldiers stationed at the state capitol, with a fence around the perimeter of the state capitol. The group of 20 agents or personnel in camouflage, they were the first ones, from what we could see, to enter the hotel, so that seems doubtful that they were actually National Guard. That's just not their bailiwick. It's much more likely that that was a SWAT entry team that went in and first engaged with the occupiers. And I apologize that we may try to respond to any questions or comments in the live stream comments, but sort of on alert here, not able to be completely engaged with the comments. Someone's saying they thought they were U.S. Marshals. I can't really confirm or deny that. I would be surprised because, as far as I know, we've not had any presence of U.S. Marshals at events in Olympia, and we've not really seen justification for U.S. Marshals. Typically are involved in federal property or other law enforcement actions, but for a hotel, we more likely see city and county resources. So it is a bit of a surprise to see State Patrol here, but it's also a lot with some of the things that have occurred to have folks sharing and working in cooperative teams. This is Olympia, Washington.
Don't go any closer. Come on.
In downtown Olympia, just about a quarter mile from the state capitol dome, which is a very close copy of the federal capitol dome. This morning we had
There's a PAO coming out to see him.
See who?
The guy from Jolt, pretty shortly.
Oh, okay. It sounds like we might be able to get some comments from law enforcement, public information officer or commander as far as what their understanding of the situation is, what their response and intention is, and how they
I was hoping to get closer to shoot a picture of that, but
Yeah,
you can't help me with that.
no.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask you a quick question?
If it's any PIO that day, he has the contact number right there. It's Olympia PD.
Can you tell me what jurisdictions are here?
State Patrol, Olympia County.
Nobody else?
State Patrol, Oli, and what?
Out to Olympia.
Thurston County?
Know everything.
Okay, thank you.
She said
She says the State Patrol, Thurston County, and Ole PD. Our question was there was a team of about 20 that were the first ones to enter the hotel that were all in camo. One person wondered if they were U.S. Marshals, and I said I don't believe there'd be any reason. Pardon?
Good guys in camo, not these.
Yes, there was kind of a strike team that entered first, and I think those were just SWAT. But I can't confirm that.
It used to be that if you talked that way to cops, they would put you in jail.
Why don't you go tell them that?
I wish my father was still alive. He was a cop. He said, I'd be cracking some heads right now.
Officer McGillicuddy and his yeah, it's
So what do you
and if it's freedom of speech, it's freedom of speech. The downside that we see sometimes is you get the emotion and everybody starts escalating. You know, the more people start screaming.
Are you live streaming on Facebook?
Yes.
And those comments are responding to your...
Just to my live stream and my commentary.
Are they listening to us talk, or did you turn off the mic?
No, they're listening to you.
Very nice.
Yeah, should I get your face also?
If you want, I don't have a problem with that.
No, I think we'll keep it focused on
I'm
the...
not part of the...
You're a news documenter, not a newsmaker.
What time did you get here?
Wait, is he arrested? Somebody's arrested.
I guess this started at 11 this morning.
Yeah, the first vestiges of it.
There he is.
Here comes somebody.
There's somebody being arrested
Can you get pictures of that? I wish I had a better camera.
with a zip cuffs on their hands. Yeah, so my understanding is that there was a housing advocacy or homeless rights protest going on in Sylvester Park behind us this morning, and as that got going, then they came over here and occupied the hotel, and they had actually rented rooms last night for 33 people, who then announced that they were not going to be leaving and that you can't force us out because of the moratorium on evictions, which is kind of emulating the MO of the Tacoma Housing Now protest at the Travelodge in
Yeah, they were talking about that on TV.
about 3 weeks ago.
Don't tell him to fucking jump.
I bet you can't even do a kickflip.
I would love to see a cop jump out the window right now.
So the people in the rooms are part of the protest?
Well, no, that person was one of the force that we're curious about, because it's not easy to see their patches or shields, but they're all in camo. So they either have to be, somebody. I'm assuming it's SWAT.
some of the people in the rooms are legitimate paying guests, and some of them are paying guests who are intending to stay here for many days.
Right. They're sort of following the pattern of what the Tacoma Housing Now protest did in Fife at the Travel Lodge about 3 weeks ago. Those of you just joining us, this is in downtown Olympia at the state capitol, just about a quarter mile from the state capitol dome at the Red Lion Inn. We have a housing homeless rights protest in the state capitol campus park behind us called Sylvester Park, which is part of the state capitol campus. That took place this morning at 11 a.m. and in the course of that protest, some of the protesters moved across the street to the Red Lion Inn and occupied the lobby and the front desk, and said they were not going to vacate until some of their demands for homeless people in Olympia were met by the local city and county government. They released a press release with the demands and the purpose of the occupation. And there were conflicting reports. One said there was just sort of a peaceful occupation. Another said that when they first occupied, that there was a knife brandished and law enforcement responded. No clarity whether there was any arrests made at that point, but law enforcement responded at some point around noon and then left without any major response. There was also a report at that time, I think that prompted the law enforcement response earlier, that said employees didn't feel safe and were either not coming or going and were sheltering in place. Not clear on what the status of the other guests in the hotel, if guests were calling law enforcement or not, and whether they felt safe to come and go is unclear. There was a second report that said the Red Lion self-reported that they had been calling multiple times throughout the day requesting law enforcement intervention and removal of the occupiers. So at about 6 p.m., this interjurisdictional force came kind of swarming in, comprised of Thurston County Sheriff, what I believe is Thurston County SWAT team, Olympia Police Department, and Washington State Patrol. And they sort of surrounded the entire hotel from all sides, as well as in the back, the alleyway. And then there was a kind of a strike team of about 20 who were all clad in camouflage, and they were the ones that first, they were the entry team, and we're still waiting to see if we can talk to a public information officer to find out if they were in fact SWAT or if they were from some other agency. They just had strikingly different uniforms on in terms of their camouflage and their hard to see any identifying patches or shields as far as local city, county, or state police signifiers. We're on a little bit of high alert just for safety, so we can't monitor the stream right now very well. So if you see folks asking questions who may be just joining the stream, or something you know the answer to for sure, please feel free to chime in. This is in downtown Olympia, Washington. The hotel is the Red Lion. You'll see behind there, the lit up sign is the Governor. That's because this for I think probably about 50 years, this was the Governor Hotel, and was purchased by the Red Lion, I think about 5 years ago. They've never changed the sign. Have done some significant upgrades and remodels, and historically was also a place where you might find state legislators, legislative staff, and lobbyists staying here during legislative session, which is going on right now. Doubtful that there's nearly as many as usual staying here just because there is, due to coronavirus, there's about a 90% of all the legislative session is taking place remotely, virtually over Zoom and similar. But because of threats, we have had upwards of 600 National Guard stationed around the state capitol with crowd control fencing because there were concerns about all types of groups, right wing, left wing, storming the Capitol, storming the governor's mansion, fighting with each other. Some just about every Saturday for several weeks there was conflict between opposing groups, and 2 weekends in a row there was a shooting. Luckily nobody was killed. Not quite sure what's happening up in the hotel room. The flashing light up there is actually
I'll tell her, I promise. I will. Gucci. It's Gertie.
I believe
Hi.
a SWAT team member.
You.
Either that or it was the room above, but
okay, I'll text her.
we could see very plainly they were. You can see someone sweeping the room.
Okay, I will. Absolutely.
A couple of officers or agents.
He said, "Hey, baby."
But the center room that's all black and has flashing light
He's like the guy version of me.
looks to be a law enforcement officer making some kind of signal to who, we're not quite sure. Do you know Morse code? That's an officer in that dark window that's been shining the same pattern with his flashlight for about 2 minutes.
Same room?
Yeah, this one in the center, dark.
They were just sweeping.
Well, that's what those two were, but this one was flashing the same pattern and now looks to have vacated the room.
Does anybody know who they took out?
So they do appear to be going floor by floor, room by room, and not quite clear if they're just the folks in the rooms, if they're just asking them to leave or if they're arresting them. They certainly made maybe 10 arrests so far, and not sure if those are protest occupiers or if those are room occupants.
So they're not letting me back.
Oh.
Kind of worried that someone's been creeping around. They might go find my car or something.
What do you think that was?
Maybe they got a hold of somebody who's fighting back up there.
That was extremely loud. It had a big resonance, like a flashbang, or didn't sound like a round.
They might have taken someone down.
So not quite sure what the loud bang was. It seemed to have too much resonance to be around. But it seemed to have a little bit of a concussive, explosive sound to it, or feel to it. Not quite sure what that's a response to that percussive So the screaming is sort of more fanfare than actual conflict. There's police sweeping the rooms up. It looks like they're in the upper floors now, and as they get to the balconies, the sort of demonstrators down on the sidewalk are shouting for cops to jump. One of the protesters just made a good point. If you're all here, who's guarding the windows at City Hall? In our experience, that's not always been well guarded, but there are plenty of folks who monitor and unbelievable amount of cameras throughout downtown Olympia, believe it or not, almost like London. Don't always respond to violence and vandalism, but there are a slew of cameras throughout downtown Olympia. And the drummer has shown up, who there's often a drum at many of the protests for Black Lives Matter, Antifa, different issues, and it sort of coalesces some of the protest chants and rhythm and marches. Again, if you're just joining us, we are live in downtown Olympia, Washington. We are about a quarter mile from the State Capitol Dome on Capitol Boulevard, which is the main street through downtown Olympia, between a park in downtown Olympia called Sylvester Park, which is technically part of the State Capitol campus, so it is managed and patrolled by the state of Washington. And there was a housing, homeless rights protest there at about 11 this morning. And some of the protesters went across the street and occupied the hotel, which is a Red Lion hotel. It used to be called the Governor House or the Governor Hotel. It's had a few different names. Now it's part of the Red Lion chain of hotels. And sometime before noon, they apparently occupied the lobby and the front desk, and had some folks outside holding signs. At that time, there was a dispute about whether it was peaceful or not. There were a police response that came and checked and apparently left. There was also a report of some type of report from the employees, either sheltering in place or not feeling safe, or someone brandishing a knife. But at any rate, the responding Olympia Police Department came and went at about 1 o'clock. At that point, it looked to be sort of not over, because the group calling themselves Olympia Housing Now had actually they reported 33 people. Not sure what percentage or of those that they said some were homeless, into rooms in the hotel and were not going to be leaving because of the moratorium on evictions. And the same thing happened in Fife, Washington, about 40 miles north of here, about 3 weeks ago at a travel lodge, and they ended up staying there for about a week while making demands on the city and the county in that area. That was put on by a group that formed sort of ad hoc and called themselves Tacoma Housing Now. So when the Olympia Housing Now group formed, they sort of followed the same MO, excuse me, of occupying by buying one night and then expecting to sort of stay. They did release also a press release of demands that they weren't going to vacate the hotel, either the residents or the protest occupiers, until a list of demands were met by the local jurisdictions, mostly the city and the county. The live stream, I can't actually respond or quote, but I believe that the list of demands was about 4 demands to put people, use FEMA money, get federal FEMA money to put homeless people into housing or in motel vouchers, temporary, during the coronavirus. A second demand was to stop the sweeps of homeless encampments and provide services, sanitation and garbage and similar things to the homeless encampments. Third demand was to so we're just checking on a situation. Okay. I apologize for the distraction. The 4 demands that the protest occupation group was Olympia Housing Now was on their press release were to provide motel vouchers to the homeless people in Olympia. We're seeing a fire. We've got smoke emanating from the building up top. Smoke emanating from the tower.
There is some smoke from the tower right there.
Hey, officer, do you have somebody on the smoke? This looks like it could end up getting dangerous or very tragic. That there's a massive amount of smoke emanating from the the main tower. It's not a separate tower. It's the tower like the elevators and such run up and down to each floor, the stairwell. And there are just plumes of smoke coming out of that. That doesn't look to be, just venting tear gas or flashbang. That looks like...
You see how they're handling cops over there? Are y'all fucking ready for that? Are you that committed to brutalizing people?
Until we find out what's going on with the smoke coming out, whether there's an actual fire or if there maybe somebody burning a mattress. That's
someday you will have to answer for this.
Extremely dangerous situation, especially if we have homeless people that are somewhat invalid in some of the rooms. Evacuating them can end up being quite an ordeal. Getting back to the 4 demands of the Olympia Housing Now were to provide motel vouchers for people living out in encampments, provide
Fuck off. You're not gonna do dick.
Come on over here.
I would just buy you 3 times for fucking chicken shit.
motel vouchers, and the sweeps was the second demand. Provide sanitation and garbage service and similar support services to folks that are living in encampments. And then I believe the 4th demand was to increase impact fees for developments in downtown to raise money for social services to provide to the homeless community. We're getting quite a bit of rain. Somebody was shining a flashlight on the smoke plume coming out of the tower earlier, so it was a lot easier to see. That's no longer the case, but it's definitely just billowing out. I don't know if you can see it from the dark we got people challenging the skirmish line of the police, and they had threatened earlier that if folks violated that, they might
Do you guys want to walk the dog over here in the park?
Are you guys leaving?
Thank you for respecting the property to smoke a cigarette outside. What a fucking concept! We're fucking normal people!
Let the Gucci do. Let the Gucci do. How narrow you is that?
It looks as if that plume of smoke has subsided, so maybe that was more bark than bite. Somebody might have lit a mattress on fire or other cushions or furniture that produce incredibly toxic smoke. But hopefully that's what it was in lieu of actual an actual fire of the building itself. We do have, it looks like, some either the police paddy wagon has returned, but I don't see any fire response currently, so we may have been dodged a really bad situation if it in fact was some kind of smoke grenade, tear gas, something like that, trying to get somebody out of a room, or if somebody was burning a mattress rather than actually a fire in the building. Just can't tell. It's gotten so dark, but there's certainly not the same plumes of smoke coming out of there that there were earlier.
Are they free to go? Are they free to return to their room? I mean, I'm all for hiring the disabled, but did we hire a bunch of youth?
And they ask louder! Are those people free to go?
Are they free to go?
You are holding civilians
Are they
hostage.
free to go?
Are you guys good? Okay.
You are literally committing the crime that you are called
You
here
have to
for.
us if you're leaving. We are escorting you safely.
not your job. Let the coochie poo. Let the coochie poo. Let the coochie poo. Fuck well. Let the coochie poo. Fuck well.
Put your mask on, dipshit.
I already asked. He doesn't care.
What the fuck is wrong with your brain that told you I want you to smile at me? Put your fucking mask on, bitch!
Pull yours up, sir. Up on the nose. Like having your penis hanging out. Fix it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pardon me.
It's okay.
Don't want to get you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a counter protester out on the street, and it looks like the law enforcement get ready to take them down.
That's their emotional bandwidth. Threatening and about to kill.
Fuck you, David Ross. Get the fuck out of here. I have a restraining order. You can't be within 500 feet of me. Don't expect David Ross, go home. I have a restraining order. You can't be within 500 feet of me. Go away. Go away. People do not fucking consent to your fucking camera. Go away.
I don't want to get you on camera.
Go away. Go away. No consent.
I don't want to get you on camera.
No consent.
He's got to get the clout. David Ross is a fucking celebrity.
I don't want to get you on camera.
He's so fucking famous.
Don't
Thank
make
you
me
for
get a
your
restraining
coverage,
order.
David.
I've been threatening it, but I'm gonna fucking do it.
We're all good here.
If you want to, go ahead.
You need to leave.
We're in public, and I'm filming a public news event. If you want to get
You're
off
not
camera,
the news.
you're not either.
You're
so
not
get out of my
press.
stream.
I'm not filming for news.
Get off of my stream.
Who's got an umbrella for David Ross? I need an umbrella for David Ross. I need an umbrella for David Ross. I need an umbrella for David Ross.
You ain't ever lived a day in color. Check it out. You ain't never lived a day in color.
I need an umbrella for David Ross. I need an umbrella for David Ross.
Just filming an event.
I need a restraining order against David Ross.
They came from everybody. They came from God. Just like everybody else.
He's such a fan. He has to talk about me for 45 minutes straight. Do you rewatch the footage and sap about it? Can you reach it? I mean, you've got a lot in the way, and it's very
Absolutely.
small.
Just please don't touch me.
When you think about me, do you touch yourself? For 45 minutes. God damn, that's a long monologue. I talk a lot of shit, but even I can't rant for 45 minutes straight. That's impressive.
I don't know. I think you can.
My biggest fan right here, David fucking Ross.
It's really sad that.
What's sad? What's sad?
What's sad is that when people are actually trying to stand up for other human rights,
Uh-huh.
that you BS the people who do it.
How am I BSing people? I mean, if you want to engage and discuss it, I want to hear your side. What am I doing wrong in your eyes?
You slam-bassed Antifa.
Well, I think if people are hurting people, that's like crossing a line.
When they're here to protect the rights of the houseless, and like you hurt that person right there.
No, I didn't. I haven't done anything to that person.
Really, because that person feels differently, and if
That person is entitled to that.
But if that person is that person's experience, then that means obviously you've done something to hurt that person, and you need to communicate to that person, ask that person why. And maybe that would better your relationship with this community.
Oh dear. Actually, we have had a wonderful conversation, that person and I, on a night that there were like equal numbers of rednecks and right-wingers and leftists and Antifa downtown, Black Lives Matter. And we had a great conversation. And that's how I first met that person. The next night, I was down because there had been some vandalism, and I was down and I was doing this. I wasn't, yelling out or calling people names or doxing people. And that person came and tried to block my view of somebody coming up and spraying a guy in the eyes so they could knock him down and stomp him. And I said, please don't block me. I'm probably your best defense if somebody tries to, I'm not going to film you, but I'm probably your best defense, ma'am, if a car, because they were blocking the road on 4th Avenue, if somebody comes and tries to run that line, I'm probably going to be the best defense as far as showing the license plate and that there was no aggression, there was no attempt to damage the car. Somebody just barreled through. And we were kind of trying to have a dialogue, and then, boom, cardboard signs and umbrellas after me. And then 2 people came right up on me and spray painted the car that we were in. And you were there?
I was watching it.
Okay. So that was not me looking for trouble or looking to be a rock star. That was me showing what was happening. And in my experience, it was not even bear spray or tear gas. It looked to be an aerosol pollutant, like WD-40 or spray paint. It was not your typical bear spray, wide swath of pepper spray. That to me is not, that's not looking for social justice. It's just pure on aggression.
I gotta check.
Pardon?
I gotta check.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Sorry. When that shit's happening, I gotta take my role.
Okay.
Yeah, no one smashed anything. We're just really happy to have a roof over their head.
So things are getting a little bit testy here, a little bit scary. We've got some flashbangs going on inside the hotel. I've got somebody trying to dox me, and I'm kind of undoxable because I run around saying this is the David Ross show. So if you want to fucking find me, I'm not that tough to find. A woman alleging harassment, and it's just insane. That to me looks like pure narcissistic drama. I don't see any social justice aspect there at all.
At least to my understanding, I think there's a little fight broke out within the crowd. I guess that's my understanding.
Was there ammunition or gunfire?
I know they used pepper balls, I think.
Okay, they were just trying to quell those people?
The non-live round. But my assumption and my understanding is there was a fight happening in the crowd.
Well, they're not the most ruly crowd, so I certainly... Stay safe, partner.
He's running security for the news guys.
Right, I could use a little bit of that as well.
I had to pull back. I had some people bothering me. I didn't want to have to hurt anybody.
I mean, when people say you're harming people, that's I take that personally because that's an absolute lie. It's utter bullshit. And that woman spews utter bullshit constantly, throws insults and attacks like candy in a parade, and expects them just to stick because she makes those allegations. Completely unfounded. And any kind of pushback makes you some kind of fascist, makes you some kind of racist or white supremacist. If you watch any of my live streams, you've probably heard me joke that I've got more black brothers and sisters in my family than all of Olympia, and it's a joke because it's not true, but it's pretty darn close. We've got a pretty small community of color in our city, and I've got 3 black brothers and sisters from a house of 9 unwanted adopted kids of all different. I always say it's 4 white, 3 black, 2 Asian. If you want to call me a racist or white supremacist, you can just fuck off. And if your way of advancing your political values or your political agenda is to try to hurt people or threaten them or use force, you can also fuck off. That's the definition of terrorism. And if you want a little editorial tonight, I'm damn happy to see a response that, yeah, we do need shelters for homeless people. We absolutely do. If we could just open a big freaking gymnasium for 6 months and say, here's help. If you want it, take it. If you don't, we got a time limit on how much we can help you. But to just take over somebody and make people feel unsafe and to impose your will by force and violence on innocent bystanders, fuck you. It looks as if Olympia Fire is on their way, so I'm not sure what the nature of that skirmish was, or if there was a paintball round discharge. Hopefully there was nothing more more serious than that. By the way, the woman that was trying to attack me and claim that she has a restraining order, which is another load of horse shit, you cannot get a restraining order or do anything for somebody coming down and filming public. That's called public domain. You have no right or expectation of privacy in our country. If you're standing out on the street, anybody can film or photograph. They can't use it for advertising purposes, but you bet they can do it for news purposes. They can film you. If you don't want that, then don't be here or don't stand in front of somebody's camera. All right. That woman claims to represent BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous people of color, and be some kind of civil rights activist, when in fact, she was the getaway driver for somebody threatening people at Trader Joe's with pepper spray. One of the gentlemen that I know was trying to get into Trader Joe's, and somebody literally was menacing and threatening people with pepper spray. That woman drove the getaway car, was caught at the local mall, Capitol Mall, arrested, resisted arrest, and when they found her contents of her car as they arrested her, they found evidence that she was part of the utter destruction on the 4th of July of our city. The smashing of 13 massive window panes of downtown Olympia's City Hall, and a myriad of other, so many windows smashed at Starbucks that they just finally freaking closed up and left town. But somehow she's helping civil rights. Kiss my ass. I'm not going to give her the dignity of identifying her, but she's come out as the leader of some made-up coalition called BLAST, saying, oh, we just need to end all rent. That's the solution. End all rent. Gimme, 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 and end all rent. Back to the story at hand, we don't see any more obvious sweeping of the rooms by law enforcement flashlights, at least up near the windows. Well, I take it back. As I say that, on the far right, second, third floor, Looks like we've just seen the same thing continuing. And it looks like we've got Olympia Fire has responded, and I'm not sure what the issue is, if somebody was injured or having a medical event. We've heard a couple of loud bangs as if flashbangs were deployed. Flashbang type sounds. If you're just joining us, we are in downtown Olympia, Washington at the Red Lion Inn on Capitol Boulevard, about a quarter mile north of the State Capitol Dome, where a housing protest took place behind me here at Sylvester Park, which is owned by the state of Washington and part of the Capitol campus. It is patrolled and maintained by the state. The State Patrol handles the law enforcement primarily for that. And at about 11 o'clock this morning, there was a protest for homeless rights and services. Some of the protesters went across the street to the Red Lion Inn and occupied the building, took over the lobby and the front desk. There was a report of possible brandishing of a knife. Sometime at that point, there was also a report that the staff didn't feel safe coming and going, maybe sheltering in place. And then the police did respond, checked out the scene at about noon or 1 o'clock, and then left. Our indication at that point was that there was no additional law enforcement response indicated. But about 5 hours later, at about 6 p.m., a massive show of force of Olympia Police Department, Thurston County Sheriff, and Washington State Patrol responded. We now have a gurney with the Olympia Fire Department rolling into the lobby of the hotel.
Oh, they've got a fucking gurney.
Please feel free to share the stream to your Facebook, to your page, to your group, to your friends that might be interested in what's going on. We don't have any feedback yet about exactly what has transpired inside the building. As I said earlier, there is a sort of a strike entry team that I believe is the SWAT team that was dressed all in camo, so it was hard to identify what agency they're with. Outside, kind of maintaining the skirmish line, has been Washington State Patrol, and we've had sort of a roving response of Olympia Police Department. Their bike patrol has been coming and going. Getting awfully cold and awfully wet, and the sort of assembled protesters protesting the police response is staying pretty steady, pretty consistent size of about 25 people from what we can see. With kind of tense surroundings, we can't monitor the comments very regularly. So if you see any comments or questions that you might be able to help with an answer that you're sure of, please feel free to chime in. Basic details: this started at about 6 p.m. a massive police response to an occupation of the Red Lion Hotel in downtown Olympia that had started at 11 a.m. this morning after sort of a ad hoc Olympia Housing Now group, what they call themselves, released a press release about occupying the hotel, the Red Lion, occupying the lobby and taking over the front desk. But they had also purchased rooms for 33 people last night, and that those people would not be leaving, and were sort of going to stay in place under the governor's moratorium on evictions. They were mistaken in that. I don't believe that is covered. Obviously, they emulated the same exact MO about 3 weeks ago of the Tacoma Housing Now operation at the Travelodge in Fife, Washington, about 40 miles north of here. Unlike in Fife, where they occupied for at least a week, about 5 hours after their first response to this location, the Olympia Police returned with coordinated forces from the Washington State Patrol and the Thurston County Sheriff and the SWAT team, and swarmed the downtown area, surrounded the building, and swarmed the inside and started going floor by floor, room by room. And it's not quite clear who they are arresting, if they are arresting the homeless occupants of rooms, or if they're just ejecting those folks, or if they even are ejecting those folks. But they are arresting some folks, and we're not sure if those are the room occupants or the protesters occupying the hotel, representing Olympia Housing Now. There's still a large contingent of at least 30 police just in the lobby alone. Of course, according to the Seattle News correspondent who we were speaking to off camera, that you may have heard earlier, who said she was amazed at Olympia's response, that our departments take this seriously and crack down. That was sort of comical, because that's anything but the track record in Olympia over the last 9 months. And if you talk to our local leaders, our city council, and so forth, you would think that we were just absolutely overrun by right-wing wackos and Nazis and Proud Boys and militias and all kinds of vigilantes running amok. We've had some wingnuts, because we're the state capitol, and they've had right-wingers and left-wingers clashing at the state capitol. We've had a couple of shootings. Luckily, no one was killed. But by far and away, over the last 9 months, the violence that has occurred downtown has been completely unmitigated. It's destroyed businesses. It has run businesses out of town. It has left waiters and waitresses and hosts and hostesses without a job, without money. It's not the big fat cat businessman that you're hurting when you destroy a $2,000 plate glass window that they have no money to fix. It's people who make blue collar, barely living wage or barely minimum wage jobs in some cases, but it doesn't matter to a snot-nosed punk smashing a window because it feels good and it's instant gratification for those dopamine receptors. The smoke that was billowing out of the top vents of the tower has completely subsided. So I'm going to assume that we were not seeing smoke from an actual fire, but from either somebody burning a mattress or cushions from a couch or chair, or some type of smoke grenade or something possibly deployed by law enforcement clearing rooms or clearing floors. There was a fire alarm pulled, or sound of a fire alarm, at about the same time. But there was no actual response from the fire department other than this, what looks to be a medical response with a gurney. And I don't believe that the crew of medics or firefighters responding with the gurney, I don't believe they have left the building yet. Well, I take it back. There is another, basically part two, the same crew of firefighters of about a dozen and a gurney entering the building.
I caught you on camera. Fine, can you mute it? Yeah. What was that? I checked mine. There's a lot of cars over there, though, and some of them are like Portland zip cars.
Oh, great.
There's a van full of people over there, a white van. Okay. There. So yeah, a bunch of black sedans over there. And at least one Portland zip car.
Black sedans meaning law enforcement or meaning rentals?
I don't know, I think rentals. Most of the tactical team came out the side.
It's not clear whether we're actually going to be able to talk to a public information officer on site. I think they gave a number to call someone, but I don't know if they have someone on site who can give us a brief synopsis of what's transpired inside, numbers of folks and conditions of people, both medically, criminally, and of course the employees and other guests, and what their intervention was, if they are leaving the guests who were bought rooms by Olympia Housing Now, if they're leaving them in place, if they're arresting them, if they're simply asking them to leave. That's all sort of conjecture at this point. If you have anyone that would be interested in knowing what's going on in the Northwest as far as protests, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Helps us get the word out. If there are any groups or pages you want to share the stream to, please feel free. And most importantly, because we're kind of on alert and can't necessarily monitor the chat and the comments, if there's so do you you said you thought that I had gone to the dark side or something like that. Is there something? I'm not showing you. It's aiming that way. Is there something that you think puts me in that category that would be worth talking about? Okay. Well, stay safe tonight. Just trying to engage a woman who was sort of acting as a bit of an advocate for the woman that was trying to block my camera or make allegations or threaten. And the gal came up with a umbrella and tried to help block the camera, but then engaged in a little bit of dialogue. It's surprising when people aren't just taking sides and aren't either being star-bellied sneeches or plain-bellied sneeches from the old Dr. Seuss story. We're not that. Yeah.
A guy just walked up. He's the guy that was previously arrested, clubbing the guy in front of City Hall. He's been out.
Oh.
He's living in a homeless shelter not too far from here. He looks like he's carrying something under his.
That's good to know.
Pedophile.
Pardon?
The pedophile.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That'd be the best thing to do tonight or with us, but we'll see. Anyway, my diatribe was that there's been a few occasions where there are a few people who are able to dialogue and not just be on opposing sides and opposing teams and diametrically opposed, that everything about you is evil and everything about me is golden. I've been at protests that turned into riots, that turned back into protests, that turned into arguments, that turned into discussions and debates. Usually that's occurred when the sort of sides, if you will, were even or equally balanced. Kind of a weird version of mutually assured destruction. This is a little bit different in that there's sort of one side and then there's a police. And there are those of us that are live streaming. There are people here from the Seattle news media, but for some reason showing the event is fascist in some people's eyes.
Yeah, he's definitely got a DOC on him, so if he fucks up, he's going to jail. He looked like he had something under his sweatshirt.
Well, I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence of people who get arrested deterred from coming back, and I mean, with zero consequences. There's been a few people that I've seen jump right back in because they've not even,
I know he's homeless. I've seen him over by Salvation Army.
If someone's committed 2 assaults and 8 months later still has yet to have any kind of slap on the wrist. Some of that is attributable to coronavirus and clogging of the prosecution of the courts, and some of it is clearly volitional on the part of local prosecutors.
I've been struggling to keep my sister out of being homeless here. Right now I've got her, she's in a telecare facility, but she was in one of the church shelters down here. I think that's Salazar from Seattle. What's her name? Probably her security.
Again, because we're kind of on alert and can't monitor the chat and the stream, please feel free to respond to folks asking questions or wondering what's going on. This is in downtown Olympia at the Red Lion Hotel, formerly known as the Governor House or the Governor Hotel. Historically, it's been where a lot of politicians, legislators, staff, and lobbyists stay during the legislative session. This year, that's not the case, primarily because the overwhelming majority of legislative session is taking place virtually over Zoom and similar formats. So at about 11 o'clock this morning, in the park behind us, which is Sylvester Park, which is part of the state capitol campus, managed by Department of Enterprise Services of the state of Washington and patrolled by the Washington State Patrol. There was a housing protest for homeless people that then spilled over, and folks decided to occupy the lobby and front desk of the hotel, and had put 33 people up in rooms on Saturday night, last night, who then said they were not going to leave. They were going to keep them there, and you couldn't evict them because of the governor's moratorium on evictions. Unless a series of demands were made. I believe the 4 demands were getting federal FEMA money to spend on motel vouchers to put all the homeless people in the community up in hotels, ending all sweeps of homeless encampments during the coronavirus pandemic, increasing impact fees on the part of developers in the downtown urban core to help pay for more services, and I think the final one was mandating sanitation and support services to the encampments, things like trash pickup and sanitation, porta potties or hand soap stations, things like that the city has done to a couple of locations. Laundry, I think, might have also been one of the requests. And that was those requests or demands were to the city and the county, because some of those go across different boundaries. In any case, when they stormed I don't want to say stormed, inflammatory, but when they occupied the lobby and the front desk of the Red Line, the initial report said that there may have been a knife brandished. Law enforcement responded. They apparently left and under the impression that things were there was going to be no intervention, at least. There were initial reports that the staff was possibly not able to leave or not able to enter, not sure, and were sheltering in place. We're not sure about the status of the other hotel guests, whether that was the case for them as well. But in any case, the police responded at about 1 p.m. and then left without really any intervention. We're not sure if there was anything that came out of the reported brandishing of a knife or if anybody was arrested. We didn't get a report of any. And then things seemed to be calm until about 6 p.m. The massive show of force of about 100 officers comprising Olympia Police Department, Thurston County Sheriff's Office, and the Washington State Patrol all came to surround the Red Lion, and an entry team of about 20, what I believe was Thurston County SWAT, entered, and then police proceeded to go floor by floor, room by room. It looks like they arrested about a dozen people total. We haven't gotten any public information officers' confirmation of any of this, just sort of from observation. The Olympia Fire Department has responded with 2 groups of firefighters and 2 gurneys. I don't think we've seen anybody come out on either one, so not sure of the reason for that, if there's a medical event or an injury, and the status of anybody who was involved. At this point, the size of the crowd has diminished a little bit from maybe 25 to 20. The squad here holding things down on the street has shrunk a little bit. I believe that's mainly because there's about 30 officers inside the building in the lobby of Olympia Police and Thurston County Sheriff. I don't know whether there are any Washington State Patrol in the inside the building. Again, we're not able to monitor the chat, the comment section at this point, with kind of being on alert. So if you have anything you'd like to add or answer any questions in regard to anybody asking them on the comment section, please feel free to answer anything that you know definitively that we've confirmed. Please keep the comments respectful as much as possible, and if you're going to engage in debate, try to be civil. I can tell you none of this has anything to do with Joe Biden. None of this has anything to do with Donald Trump. None of this really has anything to do with Ronald Reagan, who often gets lambasted for the deinstitutionalization explanation for homelessness, which was valid. I worked in psychiatric social work for about 10 years and was our county's homeless outreach case manager for about 5 of those, working with homeless, mentally ill, substance abusing individuals, helping to get them benefits and housing, helping to get them out of the criminal justice system and into support services. And the deinstitutionalization wave that took place in the late 70s and early 80s absolutely was devastating and sort of created a lot of the homeless population initially, in addition to cuts to social services. However, that was so long ago, and if you look at the average lifespan of a chronically mentally ill person, it's much shorter than your average person's. If you don't take my word, Google or Wikipedia or whatever you want to believe, NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, or WAMI for Washington, look up the average lifespan, and it's shorter. If somebody's dual diagnosis, meaning they are mentally ill and chemically addicted or substance abusing, it's significantly shorter on average. And so those people who were rolled out of hospitals in 1980 or 84 or 78 or wherever you want to pick a date, the overwhelming majority of those people are dead. It's just a fact. What's really contributing to a lot of this is a massive problem with addiction and drugs that are infinitely more powerful and permanently damaging than they were in the 70s and 80s. In addition to a dramatically shifting economy where people cannot go sell their labor for a living wage. You can't go work at the mill and make enough to rent a house or rent an apartment. You can't go work pick and brush or doing heavy manual labor. Tremendous number of those jobs are gone from our economy, and we have a sector that has kind of been passed by. In addition, our mental health system is pathetic. We let people decide what's going to be best for them with a diseased organ. If your brain is psychotic, the last thing you should be doing is deciding your best course of action while you're psychotic. And we call that civil rights in our society and kind of pat ourselves on the back for it. In my experience, it's pathetic. It's anything but compassionate. It's anything but honoring someone's humanity or civil rights. And anytime you divorce somebody's rights and privileges and responsibilities from the consequences of those actions, you set your whole system up for trouble. And if we allow people to make their own decisions, and even if those decisions are crazy, but then we let them off the hook for the consequences of those decisions, it's for disaster. We've seen some efforts in recent years to sort of throw the book at people or involuntary detention. Unfortunately, that is necessary in some cases, but unfortunately there just are not enough beds in an entire city to cover the human carnage from the meth and heroin and fentanyl epidemic. And if you listen to so-called advocates and allies who say we need just more money, more money, more money, more services, more services, more services, it's it's one of the most ignorant and privileged perspectives that you can come up with. Yeah, we do need more places to live. If somebody gets $730 a month for Social Security because they're schizophrenic, where are they going to live? Where are they going to rent that and pay utilities and get groceries? Tough luck. We have thousands of people in that predicament who simply cannot go rent an apartment because of credit, because of low income, because of not being able to afford something on what their disability with their mental illness allows them. On the other hand, thinking that just having more services and more mental health workers like what I used to do, that they're somehow going to come down and talk to somebody and do crisis intervention with someone that has permanently fried their brain with meth so that they're experiencing permanent psychosis that's even sometimes resistant to antipsychotics that would work on a schizophrenic, but when it's organic brain damage, it's drug-induced, might even be resistant. That person, there's no miracle cure, there's no miracle counselor, there's no miracle pharmacological intervention. You're not going to swoop in and unscrew that person's top of their head and pour in a reasonable, rational brain. You're going to have somebody that is permanently disabled, permanently affected, permanently cognitively impaired. And we just aren't set up in our country to deal with that. We don't have a place for them. We don't have a place to mandate that they go. We don't have a place to try to keep them. So we let them go where they want to and call it freedom, call it civil rights, call it honoring their free will. And if somebody wants to sleep under a bridge because they think that the buses are exuding poison gas and trying to kill them, or they think the wiring in their apartment was full of CIA bugs, so they ripped the wall apart, they're evicted, and now they're on the street. Apparently, a lot of advocates and allies say that that's honoring someone's free will and humanity and dignity. I think in my experience working in crisis intervention, working in case management, working in outreach, that's ridiculous. If I put my child under a freeway overpass and left them there and said, fend for yourself, wouldn't be too long before the cops, CPS, who knows, would be called. I'd probably be arrested for child abuse, reckless endangerment, something, abandonment, because that's unethical and illegal. But yet we put people with a lot less functional capacity than my child under, let them live in the forest, let them live in a ravine, let them live under a bridge, and that's just fine. And they might only have half the functional capacity, ability to survive than my child would. But for some reason, because they're over 18, for some reason, because they're an adult, leaving them there to fend for their survival and their well-being against their addictions or mental illnesses or both, call that compassion. That's a crock in my estimation, in my experience. So that's the soapbox for tonight. Tune in tomorrow. Hopefully we won't be live streaming tomorrow. Anyway, I would love your money. I would love tons of money. I could use it. But if you can spare any money, go look up the Olympia Union Gospel Mission and send them a big fat check. They do good work. Send the Salvation Army a big fat check. They do good work. Even if it's not the Olympian Union Gospel Mission, if it's the Union Gospel Mission and you're watching from Minnesota, or if it's the Salvation Army global or nationwide. Unfortunately, I don't know if a Salvation Army or Union Gospel Mission have all these newfangled Venmo and Cash App and PayPal. Facebook Pay or whatever, Apple Pay. But give to a shelter that's actually doing good work. Don't give to people that are on the street, that are looking for cash. Despite what the narrative is, there are not people dying on the street from starvation. We've got obese homeless people left and right. People are dying on the street from drugs. They're dying on the street from violence. They're dying on the street from untreated medical conditions, but not starvation. Do you guys happen to know who the camo officers are? Is that SWAT?
It depends on which ones you're talking about. There's so many different agencies.
There's the guys that were in camo suits.
I saw some in green, not camo.
Oh, okay.
So, and there's a mix of Thurston County, WSP, and Olympia PD here.
And those are the only jurisdictions to your knowledge?
That's all I've been told about, but we were called and said, hey, get here, this is what you're going to be doing, and we weren't given all the information.
Gotcha. Thank you. Again, if you're just joining us, we're in downtown Olympia, Washington at the Red Lion Hotel that had been occupied by a group calling themselves Olympia Housing Now. They started 11 a.m. at the Sylvester Park across the street, across Capitol Boulevard, which is the main street through downtown Olympia, about a quarter mile away from the actual Capitol Dome, which is about a quarter mile south of here. And at 11 a.m. they had a rally for homeless rights, and then went across the street to the Red Lion Inn, which used to be called the Governor's Inn or the Governor House Hotel. Occupied the lobby, occupied the front desk. There were reports of a knife brandished. Reports staff had sheltered in place. Not sure whether they could come and go freely or guests could come and go freely, so Olympia Police responded. And apparently upon checking at about 1 p.m., they left. Not sure whether they did any kind of intervention as far as arrests or whether the knife report was valid. But things were sort of quiet, at least appeared to be quiet. We've had a report that Red Lion was requesting police response all throughout the day. That took place at about 6 p.m. when a massive force of Olympia Police, Thurston County Sheriff, and Washington State Patrol all converged on the hotel, surrounded it, kind of set up a perimeter of police and riot gear, and then a team of about 20 folks in green, what looked like military type fatigues, were the entry team and went floor by floor, room by room. We've not gotten a report from the public information source with the police whether it looked like about a dozen people were arrested and whether they were the protesters, whether they were the room occupants, or both. And what the disposition is on the 33 people who had been staying here at the behest of Olympia Housing Now. They bought a night of housing for 33 people, or a night of motel stay, and then basically issued a press release that said we're not going to vacate the hotel until a series of demands are met. The four that I think I have clear from the press release put out by Olympia Housing Now were that to raise impact fees on developers in downtown Olympia, to stop sweeps of encampments in Olympia, to provide support services to encampments in Olympia, things like laundry and porta potties and trash service, sanitation, hand washing stations, things like that. And then the fourth was to access federal FEMA funds to put people up with hotel vouchers for the homeless community during the coronavirus epidemic. When the police response started, they began arresting about 6 people that were in the lobby that looked to be sort of the occupiers, the protesters. And then as they went room by room, there were a few, what looked like was a fire of smoke billowing out of the top vents of the hotel. In fact, I can't tell if that's continuing. Yeah, it is. And actually, it's too dark. There was a light on it earlier. So not sure if that is what that is, if somebody has like burned a mattress or a cushion. The fire alarm went off. They did not evacuate the building, and the fire department did not respond, at least in terms of a fire. We have had Olympia Fire Department respond with 2 crews of about a dozen each, firefighters, each crew of about a dozen firefighters and a gurney, and no reports yet or no visual on what the problem was with the need for medical attention. Please feel free to share the stream in groups, on pages, to friends, invite. There's not a whole lot of activity going on right now. There's still a protest group of about 15 on the sidewalk. And the police force looks like it's shrunk somewhat. Some of the protesters have moved over to the gazebo as they start to line up. We're just going to be ready to vacate the premises as the police do, just to keep everything safe and copacetic. These police are heading back to Washington State Patrol units.
Where are you located?
Pardon?
You heading this way too?
Yeah, I'm heading out. Not quite sure what the overall game plan is here. They're going to keep a small contingent force in the area. But we're going to sign off for now. Stay safe.